So when I say that I want you guys to start fleshing out your croquis and to now make them into fully developed croquis, what you can do is think of it like you could even go back, and this is the first one that I drew. Remember when I was first showing you the 10 heads and I kind of went even too long? You know, I had some, you know, playing around moments. You could go back to this and flesh it out, right? So even if I had, and I'm putting down my tracing paper is everything, even if I had this as a stick figure, and I'm gonna show you what I mean. Literally, she is a stick. And I'm redrawing it as a stick to show you that okay, so say, look, if I had, oh, see, I need white paper so you can see. There we go. I have a stick figure, right? But she's in proper 10 heads proportion. I know because I just took her from that. But you could have had as little as this when you were first mapping out, you know, your beginning croquis for me. So you can take this stick figure now and start to flesh her out. So I'm going to show you with another piece of tracing paper exactly what I'm talking about. So say, again, I just had this. I lay more tracing paper on top. Let me make sure I'm lining this up. And I'm going to now flesh her out, right? So again, I can make that neck a little wider. Make her torso a little wider. Kind of come to this point here. And remember that her hips, you know, they come out here about as wide as her shoulders, and then her thighs come from those hips, you know? So they're not gonna be, you know, way in here. They're gonna literally follow this line. So that's how I kind of just make that nice and round and pretty. And I follow that right back down there. See, I probably put, I can tell in my swoop, I put too much meat down here, but maybe she's flexing at the moment. And what I mean by that is now we're gonna start thinking about where the muscles are. So we know a big muscle is here, this big circle, right, in the thigh. And again, if this is my crotch, I'm gonna bring this right down, right? And say she's got a little thigh gap. I'm going to bring that right down, right? But these thighs, they live on these hips. You can see that. They're connected, right? Even if I made her a little wider in the hips, it's still connected. It comes down into her knee. And again, I usually indicate that with like just this little shadow, which would be under your kneecap. Pull this up a little so you can see it. That comes down here. If I'm tracing, sometimes it's hard to see if I've got it. But again, imagine my muscle is all up here. Not really a lot happening here, right? Right around the knee. That's the tiny little point of your leg, you know, where it's gonna bend. Your big muscles up here on the top. And then same with the calves. Where's all that meat? We know it. It's way up here, right? Right in the back of the calf, right under the kneecap, but behind the leg, right? And then we come down into these tiny, tiny ankles. So when I draw this, I'm gonna put my bulk up here. See how I made that big? I kind of swoop out and then I come down and I try to come into a tiny ankle, right? And I might need to tweak that, but you can see she's looking pretty cute, right? She's got some nice calves. She's got some muscle, right? You can imagine that ball of muscle that's right there, but they come into her tiny, tiny little ankles. And then from there, again, her feet. And I could actually, at this point now, even go to my reference page that I've already done and kind of copy that shape. So I can come down into these kind of triangles, but right, it's getting more of a foot shape. And again, we're imagining she's like standing on a high-heeled shoe. So she's got a little inside swoop here, maybe where her arch is, but this side goes out. And again, I've drawn it really harshly, but her toes would come out there, and it looks, you know, it's becoming a more natural foot shape. And imagine that here she's got, you know, little ankle bone sticking out, maybe even, you know, on the inside she may have a similar little bump kind of there, but I feel like that one's a little less pronounced. It just depends, I guess. And what's really nice about drawing on tracing paper is it erases like so easily. So it's easy to tweak little things. And then I can do her other foot in the same way. Imagine those toes coming out, something like that. I feel like I've made this foot a little bit bigger. But again, depending on at this point what type of shoes she was going to wear, that might be fine. You can kind of see, I'm just fleshing out the actual shape of things, you know, and I could then start to come in again. If she was barefoot, I could like add her some toes. But again, I might leave this because she, you know, I might want to add her some cool shoes. Maybe she's wearing boots, maybe she's wearing heels, I'm not sure. Okay, so I've got, from my stick figure, I've fleshed her out. I've added her muscles and her legs. Let's go back up. I kind of went down on her pretty quickly. And again, I've given her this waist, I've given her this hip, I've given her a slight little thigh gap. You can see where, you know, she's separating, pivoting from the hips into the legs. It's a good starting point. She could be, you know, imagine I want a naked mannequin to dress. So let's go back up and look at her arms, right? And this is where I saw a lot of people, they made the shoulders way too wide. Again, these shoulders should kind of sit, you know, a little bit wider maybe, or about the same as the hips. And then when you're adding that arm off the side, remember that it actually lives here, not over there, you know? So it should live here. And then again, I'm taking that right off the side, just like I took that leg right off the hip. And I'm imagining this underarm, you know? So you can see how I've done that, right? I've come off of her torso that's already there, and I've given her meat up here in her actual shoulder, and then also obviously in her bicep, right? Her shoulder's a pivot point, so that's got like a roundedness. But this is where she's got her muscle right up there, and then it comes into this elbow, which is small, right? It's the bony part. And then again, just like down here, you've got the meat of your forearm kind of right after the elbow, right? That's where the largest part is, and it comes into the tiny part of your wrist. I mean, you look at my arm here, meat, and then it comes down into my tiny wrist. So draw that in just the same way. So larger, and I come out a little bit from my stick, and then I come down into my tiny wrist. So her forearm has got meat here. The roundness is right there, right under her elbow, and then it comes down into a tiny, tiny wrist. And I can even erase this leg out of the way so it doesn't get in the way of what we can see as we're developing our hand. I've got so many layers here, I can't tell what I'm erasing. Okay, and then same, I can develop, we've got a little tiny wrist, and we can stick our hand on the end, and I could go back to my hand reference page. Maybe I even use one of the hands that I traced, and I could stick it on her. Look how I did that. I literally just put this paper right on top, and there's her hand. So in this case, I actually drew on this side. So if I want to do my special trick, see there's no graphite on this, I would have to draw on this side and then I can transfer it. Let me see if this one will work. No, that one's backwards. Okay, so I can just draw on this real quick. Oh wait, other side. And I'm just adding pencil here, right? And I inadvertently put some over there, but I don't care about that. I'll erase it. But I can now just like match this up. And trace it again. And I have this really light indication. It's really light on the tracing paper, but I've got it a little. I've got it a little there, okay? So I can now make this shape myself. And it's actually, it's a little small. I can tell that as I'm drawing. So I'll go ahead and make it a little longer, right? I feel like ultimately this is looking pretty decent. I've got it fleshed out, right? And I took that from just that reference. I can give her some little fingers if I want. I don't know, I could give her, I like to add this shadow, which is right here, sort of the knuckle bend. That sometimes works. Sometimes I'll do that instead of kind of giving the finger shadow or the lines for fingers. And it works better to kind of indicate there's her little fold of her hand, right? So she's looking a little more fleshed out. You're getting that that's a hand. You feel the gentle fold. Honestly, I think that thumb, I could tweak it and make it a little longer, maybe? I don't know, a little more delicate. You could keep tweaking these forever, obviously. It's just how much indication you want to give at this point. Again, maybe when you end up drawing this, she's got this big full skirt on and you don't even end up seeing that hand. Or maybe, honestly, the way that it kind of covers up her leg, this would be less than ideal. I would probably want her arm a little bit off the body so that I can easily draw clothes on it. But, you know, for the purpose of this, it works for now. So I'm lining her back up and I'm going to finish the rest. So same, let's see, here's her shoulder. I'm gonna come down, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Maybe I'll come a little, there we go. So see how I've given her a symmetrical sort of width, you know? I think I'm liking this. This arm's definitely coming more away from the body, you can tell. I could have split the difference and kind of brought it in a little more, but instead I'm using my sort of stick figure map to place her elbow here. And then if I've got that harsh of a bend, I'm still going to want to put all my meat there, and I'm going to want to remember to kind of bring this in where the meat of your forearm would kind of be pushing up against that elbow. And see how I just brought it out there. That's where sort of her round muscle is going to live. And it still comes up into this tiny little wrist up there. I'm just going to erase some of my lines so that it starts to look more like what I want you guys to have, which is, again, a fleshed out croquis that you can imagine as a naked mannequin body. And then same, I want her to have a hand up here. What if I wanted it to look like, you know, this hand that I've already been doing? I could do the same thing. I could bring it up and she could be waving, and look, I just kind of place it. And retrace it. And I've got this very subtle indication of it, but it's enough to get me started. I feel like it's a little long. I probably made it a little longer than I needed. And really try to start imagining where that bend is, where all the parts of the body are subtly bending. And so this is going to be probably the inside of her hand, right? The way that she's got her arm up, it's probably going to be in this direction. So also something to think about. Whereas here she's got her arm placed, you know, on her leg. You're probably going to be seeing this fold of her knuckles. But here it's almost like she's waving. So I can just think about that too, that it's like here is sort of the palm of her hand, this kind of circle. And then her individual fingers. You know, maybe even that thumb ends up living a lot closer. We need to tweak this and decide how we want her to be waving at us. But still knowing that, again, bends of the fingers are here. Individual fingers, something like that, right? She's getting closer. Need to tighten up with some erasing, but you can even draw that shadow, right, of how the thumb line would sort of come down. You could think about the inside of the hand there. So she's starting to get fleshed out. Her neck is still just like straight. You can start taking that into like slightly rounded. Give her a little bit of collarbone in there. Again, could give her, I so famously give my very flat-chested mannequins just a hint of shadow under where their extremely tiny bust would be. But you could round this out more. Oh, now I feel like I made her a little low. A little low of a bust. You could indicate at this point where her bust line would be. Maybe kind of map it out and imagine. But since usually, again, I'm imagining I'm going to be drawing clothes on her, I just want to know where the shadow would be, which is why I usually do this, like, you know, kind of line underneath. Really, unless she's got something exceptionally low cut and you might need to show cleavage. I'm not usually too stressed about the top, so like some kind of indication there is good. And then at any point when I feel like I used this stick figure that I knew had the proper proportions, and I fleshed it out to her. It was looking pretty good, like the example of fleshed out. I could clean her up. I could erase. What I could even do, if I didn't feel like erasing, I could take another piece of tracing paper, trace her again, and flawlessly perfect this time. You know, not mess up. Now I can see where every line I want to be, you know, is. So I could just trace her again and get her perfect that way. Or I could fix her on here. I could save tracing paper, however you want to do it. And I could just really now commit to lines that I want to end up keeping. And again, the goal is to have a naked mannequin. Oh, I'm going off out of view, a naked mannequin that I could put clothes on for anyone, forever. Because if I get her and I like her, I can use her again and again and again for every collection I ever do. She could be my signature model, my go-to girl, right? I could put in, you know, little bits. But this is what I want you to do when I say flesh her out. You could do something like that, a little side boob indication. I want you to have a croquis that you could use. I feel like the shoulder's actually seeming, you know, this is where you could tweak. I feel like it's seeming a little wide, it's seeming a little high. She's like a little linebacker. And again, maybe it depends on the clothes she's wearing. Okay, so now I've got her body pretty fleshed out, and then I wanted hands and feet, which I have, and then I want you guys to take it a step further and add her a face in there. So I can go back to my face reference that I did, right? And I could give her this face. I could look at this face as I'm drawing and give her exactly this. So I do the same thing for my tiny, tiny croquis head. Let me see if I can slide her underneath of the camera. There we go. I'm gonna map out my center, right, with a tiny line, and I'm gonna map out my center this way. So see how I've done that? You'll erase those later. I'm going on tracing paper. I know I'll be able to erase it, and just do it really nice and lightly. And then so I'll do the same thing. I'm gonna map out some eyes. I'm gonna aim for symmetry, though it never works, but I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna do less is more, you know, as little lines as possible. I'm already like drawing darker than I would like. I'm going to map out some eyes that I feel okay about. And then again, what's my point? Halfway, dot, 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 halfway between this lower mark. And then right above it, I'm going to put her nose, which again starts as this kind of triangle. And again, you do not have a lot of space to add detail here. So as few lines as possible. And I could give her maybe a slight bridge of the nose there. But we are just dealing with such a tiny amount of space. And I could come right down and give her lips, that little heart-shaped top. I'm gonna get silent now as I get real serious. Okay, something like that, something like that. I've got really tiny, tiny details. This will be fun when you guys see how you translate your larger faces into tiny croquis faces. And honestly, I mean, that's so close. I can just take that same shadow from her bridge in the nose and make it her eyebrow. Something like that. She's so much simpler than our large face. I'm kind of giving her a little pupil, but it's almost too much. Like, it's so small. It's hard to see. So And then I've got, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, you know, it doesn't take much. I've filled her up. It's so much faster. I can now shape out her face. And I've got, this is where you can start thinking about how heavy your lines really are when you give this dark, dark line around her face. And her details of her face are so small, it's gonna read as unwanted shadow. So you might want to go back and just make this a gentler line, right? So it's not so heavy shadowy. And I'm gonna erase my little pinpoint erasers, making quite a bit of smudge. There we go. I've erased around her neck, but this is where you could give, you know, a little shadow under, right under her head there, right? So you can see how much that's protruding. I could give her those little baby ear indications, and then I can give her some hair. I'm going to give her some bangs. Something like that. I'm not exactly loving this hairstyle. That's what happens when you wing it. It's good to have a plan before you start. But I can just erase and fix it. I have an idea in my mind of what I want. I think my eraser is actually getting dirty. It's just like adding more gray lines. Okay, desperately trying to erase. Okay, something like that, right? She's got a few lines to indicate her hair. And again, everything is sort of noted in here. We're not missing anything. She's fleshed out. She's got a hair. She's got face. She's got a body. Honestly, this would be really good at this point. You could leave it on the tracing paper, or you could try the trick of flipping her over onto a piece of white paper and transferring her graphite neatly to the white paper, and then you can draw her on the white paper. Either way, however you want to do it at this point, because if you liked her, again, you could use her again and again and again for everything that you're going to draw, and we could easily now add clothing on top of her. I won't even demonstrate. I wanted to for a second there, but you know what? We're not even going to jump ahead yet. We're just going to leave her naked with the hair and face, with hands and feet, very well fleshed out. If we continue doing more, it might actually hinder us when we go to add color and when we go to add clothing. So honestly, this is as much, you know, as we want. You know, I can see this indication, you know, of a line, of fingers, of feet, of toes, of, you know, everything that we need. But honestly, this is a good point for now. Okay, so this is what I want you to have: a fleshed out croquis with hands and feet, I want you to erase all the things you don't need. So all the times that I drew like little circles in there, you know, erase that. And this is where like redrawing her with more tracing paper might help, so that you can actually just get her just perfect. Because again, all of this is going to help you. If you already have your croquis done later when we go to do our collections, you don't need to draw them again. You've already got good ones. So if you've got something that worked well even from the first croquis that you did, just like I did, you know, I used this to make her and I cleaned her up. So that's what I want you to do. You don't have to start from scratch. I want you to build upon what you already have. And I didn't, you know, I looked at this for her face. Honestly, it's not exactly the same, but I just made adjustments. Again, I can go in and erase anything unwanted. Ooh, she's real gray and messy, but I'll keep working on this and I'll erase it and I'll take a photo of what I want from you guys, okay? So that you've got it perfect. And I want you to do this however many times I said, 6 times, 12 times, whatever I said in the assignment, so that you've got a bunch of them. And they should also be preferably in different poses and with slightly different faces and hair, so that you have options later that you can now pull from this bank of fashion croquis that you've developed. Ooh, look how dirty I am. So much. Okay,